Welcome to Story of series. It's the same concept as the discontinued Groovy Discount Files series, but more thoughtful, in-depth, and better edited. The artist I'll be covering today is one I've already featured on the channel, but not in its entirety. Now, this artist's story is fascinating, probably one of the most fascinating stories I've come across as a music listener and reviewer. With that being said though, today we'll be going through the story of Avicii.
5 days a week, just working on new solo stuff. And I just started.
Tim Bergling was born on the 8th of September 1989. He had a rather normal childhood growing up in Stockholm, Sweden, in the same area until the age of 19. His father, Claes Bergling, described him as somewhat introverted who enjoyed video games, deep conversations, and quote, hard to get out of bed in the morning. He started mixing music in his bedroom around the age of 8. And by the time he was 16, he began making music seriously, teaching himself production, hardware that may or may not have been a pirated copy of FL Studio, although he was able to post remixes on online forums such as laid-back Luke forums to refine his style and gain exposure. The name Avicii, which was what the world will soon know him as, is the respelling of... I have virtually nothing else to say about how to pronounce this thing. And that term, which is referred to as the lowest level of Buddhist hell, he chose the name because his real name was already taken on MySpace. By 2007, he signed with DJ Fitz Plays, and his earliest tracks would be under that label. Around the late 2000s, Avicii released Sound of Now, Muja, Ryu, and Even, which are all fine, nothing special, just fine electronic tracks. Among other remixes such as When I'm Thinking of You, Avicii vs. Feel Good remix, Dancing, the Avicii remix, On Sebastian Bennett track, and Soloist Avicii Grease Joy mix. This was a rather quiet period for Tim, but this era for him, I would say, works as the workings of the pure artistry that will come for the foreseeable future. 2009 would be the year Tim started to move away from his bedroom to a label and get attention for his tracks. Throughout 2010, he would also be working on the alias Tim Burr. During this time under this alias, he released Seek Bromance in April as an instrumental, but later in October, he released the version with vocals. He signed a deal with EMI Music, published in Europe, which was a move that will give him huge industry recognition. My Feelings for You with Sebastian Drums was released in December and received success in the dance charts. In the same month, Tim would start playing a certain track for the public under no pseudonym. He would also play the song in major festivals, more specifically in March at UMF in 2011. And this track would be his shot into the mainstream and for EDM at large. What was that track, you might ask? Avicii began crafting this particular song with the specific aim of incorporating the vocal sample of Etta James's 1962 gospel tinged track Something's Got a Hold on Me, which was discovered when he heard its use in Pretty Lights Finally Moving. Tim wanted to take the vocal sample, embed a big synth lead riff and a hook that would work for both clubs and radio. And so in October 2011, Avicii gave us Levels. While I do often complain about certain albums or songs being radio friendly, Levels, I can't say it's one of those songs. I mean, it has a level, no pun intended, of importance for the broader narrative of EDM. It helps shift the perspective from DJs playing sets to producers creating global anthems. This will also become Avicii's first landmark in early 2010s dance music. How I feel about it? It's flat out perfect. The use of the vocal sample is great for that breakdown in the middle of the track. Its success was widely recognized, broke into the US on Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 60, reached at number 1 on the dance club charts, 8-time platinum in Sweden, nominated for Best Dance Recording at the 2013 Grammys, and as of September 2024 is over 1 billion streams on Spotify. Levels was a global phenomenon for both EDM and Avicii, and a few artists that were also in the dance music scene gave their thoughts. When Zed was asked what song he wished he had produced, he replied with, "One song I always think back to and I wish I produced is Avicii's Levels." Skrillex, who had also made his own landmark with Scary Monsters and Ice Sprites and bringing dubstep into the mainstream, said, "The remix I did of Levels hasn't left my set since I made it back in 2011. And I'll say, the remix of that song is shockingly good. Now, the song commanded respect for Tim while laying down the blueprint for many producers to come, such as Kygo, who had started out being known for his tropical house sound as a branch from the tree that Avicii planted, Alan Walker, who had also made a huge hit with Faded in 2015 with the anthemic synths and emotional vocals leading up to the luscious chorus, and Steve James, who was inspired by the song to make his own music after seeing it live when he was 14. Now, this song created an echo chamber for the better part of the 2010's dance music scene. Now, we wouldn't have gotten songs like Faded or Firestone if not for Avicii. But if this were the catapult into the mainstream, then we were going to be in for one hell of a ride. Through the darkness, guided by a beating heart.
Yeah, like that beat.
In 2012, Avicii started previewing new material and collaborating widely. He had done work with Nicky Romero on the song I Could Be the One, along with vocalist Nuni Bao, while also releasing Silhouettes that same year. But the Avicii train wouldn't stop there though. As for the entirety of 2012, he would do approximately 168 shows, as it started with the House for Hunger tour, which had started in January, 26 shows in 27 days in North America. In March of 2012, he received the big opportunity to headline at the Ultra Music Festival in Miami. While the performance was great, the biggest highlight of the entire show was a surprise appearance of Madonna introducing Tim to the stage. I mean, look at them. They're pretty much having fun. Honestly, this is a pretty big moment for Tim. This would literally elevate his profile in the music industry, and it really shifted him towards broader audiences. And the set was also comprised of unreleased tracks that would become big later on. Avicii would then expand his brand beyond music and become the face of the Ralph Lauren Denim and Supply Fall 2012 campaign. In early 2013, he released the XU project in February, still doing a lot of tours, playing many concerts worldwide with over 90 shows. Avicii performed at the main stage set at UMF in Miami once again. This time, there was a large chunk of material that would give us an impression of his up-and-coming album. These tracks will be played by live instruments, bluegrass, country, and vocals, which were outside of your typical UMF performance for Tim. While we as people look back at this as a bold statement and artistic intent, so many people slandered the hell out of this performance at the time. Now, the crowd during the performance was either booing or left confused. But still, in mid-2013, he released a 60-minute promotional mix on SoundCloud with tracks from his up-and-coming album. Later in June, he will release Wake Me Up and You Make Me as the two lead singles. So in 2013, September, we got his debut album, True. Is this like a trick question and I'm supposed to say false? This album was in the works from 2011 to 2013, and the sound of this album is immaculate genre-wise, mixing country, bluegrass, folk, house, electronic, and pop. Like, it brings these fascinating tracks like Hey Brother and Addicted to You, as they are rather experimental tracks in the context of this album. There's also a hint of disco with the track Lay Me Down with vocals by Adam Lambert. The chorus represents itself as a disco rave with a touch of funk, and the guitar playing is really solid. But that's also because Nile Rodgers is on it. Like, he actually worked with Tim on this track. Nice. Hope there's someone sounds like Tim going back to his roots in house production. Dear Boy also carries that classic house production as well. Long Road to Hell takes me back to Wild Wild West, especially with the kazoo putting in the full 8 hours. Shame on Me is an example of Tim clearly crafting a song for the album music listener's ear, sampling the snare from the Sweet's Ballroom Blitz and a bass line from Yellow's The Race. Liar Liar is fine, but it's mostly due to the chorus. It's underwhelming, but the song overall is still a bop though. Almost everything about this album is great, but the key track is Wake Me Up. Now, this is obviously like the big song from this year for Tim, and it's probably a song you know solely for that fucking chorus. Now, the vocals from Aloe Black are quite nice, but it's the production that does the heavy lifting. It mixes country, EDM, pop to wonderful effect that creates one of the most memorable anthems of the 2010s. And I honestly don't really hear this album's name or really Avicii's name at that end when it comes to music discourse today. Granted, it was back in 2013, but then again, I hear a bit about Kanye's Yeezus Once in a Blue Moon and even Daft Punk's Random Access Memories as they went out with the bang with that record to this day. But all in all, this is one hell of an album. It's great, it's phenomenal. Please go check it out if you haven't already.
To me, it feels like going from being normal to being like very like down because of all the work. It's so much workload, you know.
The success of this debut was good. It debuted at number 2 on the UK charts, peaking it in the top 10 in at least 10 countries, selling around 45,000 units in its first week. Reviews are decent, with Metacritic giving it a 69 out of 100. That is quite interesting. People were expressing how bold the fusion of genres was and how Avicii expanded the idea of what a dance EDM album could be. The album was often cited as a turning point in that it helped validate that an EDM producer could would release a full-length album with a broad musical reach and not just relying on the singles. The album opened the doors for other producers and expanded the reach towards wider audiences. Later on in April 2014, Lay Me Down was released as a single. In March of this year, he released remixes of his debut album called True Avicii by Avicii. It's a nice listen, though some songs work better remixes than others. Liar Liar, You Made Me, Lay Me Down, and Hope There's Someone work a lot better as remixes, but with other tracks like Shame on Me, Hey Brother, Wake Me Up, and Dear Boy are slightly worse versions than the originals, but they're still quite good. And the last song that I mentioned is going to be of use for one of the songs in his next album. In May, Avicii collaborated with the lead singer of Coldplay, Chris Martin, to lend his sound to the making of A Sky Full of Stars. I would say that this is possibly his best production, but Wake Me Up isn't too far away from this time, so I digress. In October, he released The Days with vocals by Robbie Williams as a part of the Days/The Nights EP. Later on in November, he would add The Nights to the EP. Both songs continue Avicii's artistry, with The Days acoustic heavy groove, as over time it builds into an EDM anthem at the last leg. The Nights achieves that anthemic sound on the pre-chorus, taking what he's learned with Wake Me Up. Now, during 2014, Tim would still be touring a lot, with over 80 shows across the whole year, but that would come at a big cost. In September, he announced the cancellation of his remaining performances due to health concerns. Now, it is this point in the video that is going to be quite important in regards to Avicii's relationships in touring, because this kind of issue is gonna meet up with him again as we go further into his story. His health concerns date back to 2012 when he developed acute pancreatitis, which was from heavy drinking as a way to cope with the fame, heavy load of shows, as well as stress and irregular schedule with little to no rest and constant flights. And in early 2013, he had his gallbladder and appendix removed, also on painkillers during his tours, and he also didn't want to look weak or disappoint fans. Now, by the time we have reached 2014, it was the crashing point. Constantly touring 300 shows in 2 years. He was supposed to perform at UMF that year, but unfortunately collapsed and ended up in the hospital. This wasn't something small though. This was from a blocked bile duct and severe stomach inflammation that was connected to his earlier surgeries. And the painkillers weren't making things better either. They were prescription drugs he was given to by his doctor because he was in constant pain every day. And by mid-2014, he was clearly exhausted, and Tim was realizing that he couldn't keep living like this. Obviously seems like he was going through dark times. I'll say this again, I will have to bring something like this up because it's gonna follow him for the rest of his life. In early 2015, he started the Stories World Tour as he went on to perform around 68 shows throughout the year. In September, he unfortunately had to postpone the remaining tour dates due to exhaustion and internal pressures. Throughout the year, he released some singles that would give us an impression of his next album, Stories, released in October 2015. Now, I think this is a very good continuation of what he was doing by this point in his career. While it's not as monumental as his debut, some of Avicii's best tracks also land on this album as it continues Tim's use of country and folk music blends. This time, the piano is added to Tim's identity to music. Waiting for Love, the lead single, demonstrates that on full display. Other tracks like Touch Me and Talk to Myself have more punchy production. 10 More Days and Pure Grinding are more examples of Avicii's experimental and skeletal production. Broken Arrow sounds like a successor to Levels. It's nice to hear Avicii use what put him on the map. It's about supporting someone through difficult times. True Believer and City Lights have him going back to his roots in house production with a more refined sound. Can't Catch Me sees Tim stripping back his sound and has Wyclef on vocals. The lyrics are very much inspired by going through immigration and escaping conflict in Haiti. Somewhere in Stockholm achieves that same sound while also working as a loss of belonging for leaving his hometown. Sunset Jesus is the best song of the record and one of the most underrated songs in his whole career, and features vocals from Sandro Cavazza, who will work with him more in future projects. The instrumental from this song is actually from one of the remixes that I mentioned earlier. I mean, it sounds so bright, lush, and gosh, this song is just flat out amazing. Trouble is another example of Avicii blending country and electronic music. The lyrics seems to be the most reflective of Tim's career. Now, I wish that song was the closer, but it's unfortunately Gonna Love Ya, which is also a single. It's a nice, simple jam, though I could have easily done without it. Like I said in the beginning, this is a very good follow-up to his debut, and one that is defined by how far Tim has come as an artist.
I feel like SOS was a song that was probably ahead of its time for when he wrote it.
The reception for Stories was mixed and positive at best. It sold 1 million units by November, debuted at number 1 on the US Billboard Top Dance Electronic Albums chart, and was the 4th most streamed album of the year worldwide on Spotify. But even with its success, it sold less than true. People saw it as Tim deviating from his EDM anthem formula, which was a risky move. Early in 2016, he did more music, releasing his remix of Beautiful Heartbreak, originally by Morden and Frida Sun Demo, and launching Taste This Feeling as the Coca-Cola anthem with Conrad Sewell. It's nice, but nothing special in the grand scheme of things. In March, during his performance at UMF, he debuted some demo tracks, including We Burn Faster Than Light, which also features Sandra Cavazza, Lord, Our Love, Unbreakable, and an unreleased collaboration with Sia titled All I Need. But in that same month, on the 29th, Avicii would announce that he would be retiring from touring, citing his health concerns and expressing his desire to live more as a person rather than being seen as a non-stop working machine. He would continue his live performances in Ibiza and Japan throughout June, July, and August. In June, he released the track Back Where I Belong with Otto Knows. Otto Knows is actually a good friend of Tim's, and they've known each other since they were kids. On the 28th of August would mark his final show at the Ushuaia Ibiza Beach Hotel. And man, it sucks that the whole performance isn't available to us, but you could check out the final section of the performance on YouTube. The link is in the description. Later in December, his team announced that Tim parted ways with his longtime manager, Arash Pornori, and his label, PRMD. He would then sign with Universal Music Sweden, and the third studio album was expected in 2017. Luckily, Avicii would still make music after he stopped touring, teasing music on Instagram posts in 1-minute snippets with title track hashtags. Then Avicii would release I'm not saying that name. Now, of course, this EP was released in August of 2017. The sound of this EP easily describes Tim's decision to do things on his own terms. Tracks like What Would I Change It To with Aluna and So Much Better as his remix that was originally by Sandro Cavazza explore more of his stripped back sound. He still makes times for big anthems though, Without You with Sandro Cavazza, Friend of Mine, and You'll Be Loved. But the key song from this EP is Lonely Together with Rita Ora, and it's a highlight for the same reason any Avicii song will be a highlight up to this point. It's honestly a nice little EP. Later in September, he announced a documentary called Avicii True Stories, which would further context on his life, retirement from touring, and behind-the-scenes struggles. In multiple posts and interviews, Avicii has expressed that he had hundreds of ideas, demos, and incomplete tracks stored. He had planned to push his artistry further by exploring beyond the festival anthem with more layered and diverse, including psychedelia, Arabian music, and the sounds of the Caribbean. And if you remember back in 2014 when he was working with Chris Martin, they were also working on another track called Heaven, which was a demo track Tim played at his last couple of shows. This song would also be intended to be released on his next album. And as a treat, in April 2018, he decided to travel to Oman to go on vacation. However, I'm sure some of you know this. This will be the last time his friends would see him.
Died Friday. Avicii, whose real name was Tim Berling, was 28 years old. His publicist says the Swedish DJ and
one of the most famous DJs in the world has died. Avicii was found dead in the Middle East nation of Oman.
So many people that are going through dark times, and you wouldn't know it because sometimes they can just wear a really good mask.
Hey guys, it's Sean from TMZ. We just found out that Avicii, the famous DJ, has passed away sadly at the age of 28. He passed away in Muscat.
It was on April 20th, 2018. Tim Berling was found dead in Muscat, Oman. Oman authorities reported that no criminal suspicion or foul play was found. His family shortly after released a statement. In later media reports and statements, there were a lot of insinuations about him taking his own life, but there isn't any official diagnosis by authorities. Now, I would say it is likely that he did take his own life, unfortunately, possibly due to the immense stress he was under, and possibly with the unfortunate realities of fame that soon caught up to him. Now, tributes poured in globally from other artists, festivals, fans, and media, recognizing his influence and the void his passing left in the music community. In March 2019, Tim's family launched the Tim Berling Foundation for raising awareness for mental health and suicide prevention. Now, thankfully, there was more music that was released. SOS and Tough Love as singles for his next album. Later in June, Heaven was finally released alongside his final album, Tim. Now, I'll say that this album is alright in hindsight, but it's a very nice gesture for Tim's legacy and honor. Most of the material on this record was unfinished, but his team decided to take some of the tracks Avicii was already working on and finish them to the best of their ability. Like I said, it's alright in hindsight. There are highlights from this record, such as Ain't a Thing, Hold the Line, Freak, A Heart Upon My Sleeve, which actually dates back to 2013 as an instrumental, and the closer, Fades Away. And these tracks are all good, but the de facto song that was sent off of Avicii's legacy like a bow is Heaven. I would say that that's mostly due to the music video for it, with footage of showing Tim's time visiting Madagascar in 2016 as a way to reminisce of his memories of him. But I also like the breakdown that leads to the buildup of the last leg of the track. It's almost unnerving. Now, the album is nowhere near his past works, but I'm glad it exists for the sake of sending off to one of the greatest artists in the 2010s. Now, for what it's worth, the album sold 28 units in the US in its first week. It debuted at #1 on the US Billboard Top Dance Electronic Album Chart. Later in December, there was a whole damn concert in his honor. Live performances from his previous collaborators and other artists. Honestly, it's a good time. I would be lying though if I didn't cry at all throughout watching that performance, specifically when it comes to the last section of when they played Levels at the end of the show. And I love how they show pictures and footage of Tim in all his glory, a few artists explaining their experiences with working alongside Tim. I also appreciate that some of the songs that are original EDM anthems are tuned down for the sake of emotional weight. And honestly, it's actually available on YouTube if you're interested. The link will also be in the description. So what's been going on with the Avicii brand since? There was a documentary called I'm Tim, released in December 2024, alongside a concert film called Avicii My Last Show, reminiscing of his final live performance. Then there was Avicii Forever, a 19-track compilation released in May of this year, which include many hits, plus a new single called Let's Ride Away featuring El King. And then there was another single called Forever Yours, which was Tim's 2016 Ibiza version, released February early this year. Granted, I wasn't aware of his passing at the time he had passed on, but it wasn't like it was easy to talk about his passing. I mean, he was only 28 when he passed on. I mean, he was a man that was unfortunately taken from us too soon. Now, if you want to get into Avicii's music, I would recommend purely his debut. It's phenomenal, showcases everything Avicii's great at. And if there's any other artists that y'all want me to cover next, whether that be from the EDM space as well, I would love to know what it is in the comments. And as always, I'll see y'all in the next video.